Yeah, alright, so the very first time I ever ate mushrooms, there are these little orange mushrooms, and I've never seen these again either. Um, the cap was just as orange as the stem, and they were like this tall, and they were equally orange, the stem and the cap. And I didn't think anything of it because it was only the first time I've ever got shrooms. I just thought maybe that's what they look like. And still, after all the mushrooms I've gotten, I've never seen mushrooms look like this, like these ones. Anyways, and they were like an inch tall, and I ate them with a friend. And if that friend would have been there when I bought them, I wouldn't have bought them because he was pretty convinced they were fake. But he wasn't there when I bought them. He was there after I had them and was like ready to do this with me. And while they were kicking in, he was like, "So if these are fake, what are you gonna do to this guy?" And I was like, "Why do you say that?" And he was like, "Because I'm pretty sure these are fake." Because he's already had mushrooms before. He knew what they look like and shit. He's like, mushrooms don't look like this. Because they were taking longer to kick in than they should have. And not once, but like a few hours after they kicked in, I was seeing these little tiny pin dots, like in perfect squares. Like, alright, imagine a tornado, like it's a cone shaped this way, and it has a spiral right here, like the top of the spiral. Just imagine if you were to take a little tornado and turn it 90 degrees so the top of the spiral is... You're seeing only the top of the spiral, but you can see down into the tornado. And through the tornadoes, it was contorting the background, like the houses, whatever was behind where I was looking would be contorted in the tornado like this, like it was like going in circles. And they'd get bigger and smaller. Like they'd start like the size of a pin dot, and then they'd get bigger and bigger and smaller, bigger and bigger and smaller, and there was probably 25 of them. Like the weird thing is they were like spaced off, like there was a sheet of graph paper, like this, and on all of the intersections of the graph paper, like perfectly spaced, would be these little pin dots that would appear and they'd start really, really tiny, and then they'd get bigger like this, and then they'd go back like this, and then they'd all do it at the same time, like all over my vision, like maybe like 6 inches apart each, like probably this far apart, like all the way to the edges of my vision, top and down. Sometimes they would get like extra big, sometimes they wouldn't get as big as the last time. I started fucking crying, and I was really freaking out because I thought there was something seriously wrong with my brain. And never, like on acid or shrooms, did that ever happen to me before. And now thinking back on it, it actually would scare the shit out of me still, even after all this tripping. If that were to happen to me, like even with all this experience, it'd be that would fucking freak me out. And it probably went on for like an hour and a half. And we each ate. We split an ounce. Mm-hmm. So we each ate. That's the most amount I've ever eaten, too, because I didn't know how much to eat. The guy I got it from didn't tell me. I figured he gave me like 2 doses for $80. Yeah, so we like polished an ounce between the two of us.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
An ounce.
Yeah, so 14 grams each. I think I ate more of them, though. Houston was just not telling me, like, not to eat. He probably knew how much to eat, but he just wasn't telling me.
How long were you feasting for? Just one after another?
Oh, man, probably driving around in the car. I don't know, like 20 minutes. But yeah, that story scared the shit out of me. There's another story I wanted to talk about when I smoked weed. With the first time I smoked weed, laced with PCP, dusted, and I was sitting down in the field, and in a t-shirt, and I could feel the weeds like touching my skin, like the tips of them, and it felt like what that stuff would do is it would like greatly trick out the way I feel and what I hear. So my feeling and my vision would I'd start tripping in this way that not acid, shrooms, or anything makes me trip in. Like shrooms and acid are like visual, a little bit audio, and just this constant, really good, continuous feeling. But this was like, I could physically feel the weeds like growing, it felt like the weeds were growing under my skin like this. I was just sitting in the weeds like this. And the wind would just like blow them like over my hand like that. But it legitimately felt like the weeds were like, the tips of the weeds were growing under my skin, around my arm, and like up my arm like this. And then they would like grow back down like this, like bunches of them. And it didn't hurt, but it felt like the weeds were going between my muscle and my skin. And they would just be like growing in and out of me like this, and pulled me to the ground. Like I could physically feel them like pulling me to the ground. I was just like, ugh. And I just laid down in these weeds, just feeling them like doing that to me, like, everywhere that I could feel weeds touching me. And I was just like, how the fuck can I be feeling this? And then a plane flew by, and the sound of the plane, I was listening to the plane so intently because it sounded so alien. Well, it sounded like a plane at first, and then the farther away it would get, and the more intently I'd be listening to it, the more alien, like from another dimension sounding it would be. And then my brain completely, for another like 30, 45 minutes, I was hearing the plane in my imagination. And it was playing this like, I can't possibly make the noise with my mouth. That's the annoying part, is it sounded so much different. I just couldn't possibly replicate the noise with my mouth, but I remember what it sounded like. And it sounded like something from another dimension. And then I continued laying there for so long that I forgot that I was laying down on my side like this, on my shoulder. I thought my shoulder was my ass. Like, because I pretty much checked out when, visually, I wasn't focused on my vision at all for like 45 minutes. So I just wasn't focused at all. I just like erased my memory on where I was and what I was looking at. But as soon as it occurred to me, I thought that my ass was my shoulder, and I was sitting up, leaning against a tree or something, and I was looking at aspen trees, those thin, straight line noodle trees. I thought I was looking at a bunch of those, like far away, and I was really just like laying down, and there were weeds like this far in front of me, and I didn't realize that I was looking at weeds, because I thought I was sitting down and looking at trees, those aspen trees. And they legitimately looked like trees until I realized that this wasn't my ass. And I sat up, and as I was sitting up, the weeds legitimately looking like trees started just slowly, like, morphing at the speed that I sit up like this, from trees into weeds. Like, they would legitimately looking like trees. And then as I was sitting up, they'd like be turning from trees into weeds. As soon as I realized that they were weeds, and so my brain thought that they were trees because they looked like it while I was sitting down, because I thought that I was legitimately looking at trees. When I was like looking out into the sky, listening to the plane, I was looking at just the tops of the weeds, and that whole time I just thought they were trees. Like, I wasn't really focused on them at all, but in my peripheral vision, they looked just like trees, and it was really the tops of weeds. So that's why I thought I was looking at trees. And it was just really weird what I saw when I sat up and realized they weren't. There was another time that I ate mushrooms, and I had a fan, old Ricketer, that while it was on, it sounded, old Ricketer sounded like, while the fan was on, like it was a portal to another dimension, and there was a speaker, like as big as the size of the fan from the other dimension, just like playing music through my fan, which was the portal allowing this other dimension to play music, because my fan sounded like an otherworldly, other dimension sounding shit. And I don't remember what that sounds like. I'd pay $200 to go to like find it in my brain, like go into the past and pull up that knowledge of what that sounded like so I could listen to it through speakers. It sounded like nothing I'd ever fucking heard in my whole entire life. And never have I heard a fan sound like that. I've heard shit sound weird while I'm tripping, but usually my auditory doesn't get tweaked out that bad when I'm tripping. Like, it's really rare when I have severe auditory hallucinations. But those I remember well because they're so rare. And weed laced with PCP and that one mushroom that David gave me that I've never seen another one like, ever. When I was hearing music from another dimension through old Ricketer. And yeah, leave in the comments if you have any like really crazy stories that just really stood out in your mind from trips. Oh, and somewhat recently, I had this trip that was really fucking crazy. I was sitting here, and it was only 6 grams of shrooms, but they were like the best shrooms that I've ever had. Mm-hmm. And this was like just recently. And I was sitting here and listening to music, and the wall would start moving away like this. Like the room looked like it was stretchy, and it was like 5-10 feet like this, and then it would stretch back like the proportion, and it looked like the room was getting bigger and wider and then shrinking smaller, like, and the speakers would get bigger and smaller along with it. Like the speakers looked like they'd come out like this, and as they'd come towards me, the speakers would be getting bigger like this, and it legitimately sounded like the music would get louder and quieter along with the size of the speaker. I was like, holy fuck, this, I can hear the volume actually adjusting because I'm having a hallucination. The speakers are growing and shrinking in size. Mm-hmm. What the fuck is that shit? And yeah, the room was just stretching like this, and the like stuff was growing in size and shrinking in size, but especially these 2 speakers. And it was affecting how the music sounded, the volume of it. And yeah, that was probably a month and a half ago. That's pretty fucking holy shit. Mm-hmm. Alright, yeah,